Straparola. I think it's second night. Okay. No, I think second because I deleted one of the nights. Because I restarted from the very beginning last time. And usually because Valerie goes to sleep a little bit before I notice it. So I usually go back a couple of paragraphs backwards and restart from a little bit earlier. Now, Pastumius, who was now a lusty well-grown youth, when he heard his doom and the disposition of his goods ordered by the Marquis, ran quickly to Theodora and said to her, "Mother, would it not be wiser for me to hang my father myself, thus gaining the third of his goods, which would otherwise pass to a stranger?" And to this Theodora replied, "Truly, my son, you speak well, for if you do this, your father's riches will remain with us intact." So Pastumius went straightway to the Marquis to ask leave to hang his father, and thus earn the hangman's share, which boon the Marquis graciously allowed. You probably don't remember anything, right? So I need to give a short introduction. So the first night, we are listening to a story, I think by Lucrezia, but don't remember very well. And she tells a story about a young man who receives 3 rules from his father before his father dies. The first rule is to never befriend a wealthy ruler, like a governor or king or somebody who is wealthy and who rules people. And the second rule was to never adopt a son, like to never adopt a child from somebody else's family. Only to have his own children. And the third rule was to never tell secrets or share all the secrets with his wife, no matter how much he trusts her. So this young man, he goes to a new town, he marries a beautiful woman, but they do not have children, so he adopts a son named Pastumius. And he starts to he is very interested in sports, looks very nice, so he befriends the Marquis who rules this town. And he becomes his best friend and right hand. Every person who needs a favor from this Marquis goes to him. So he becomes very wealthy, very very fond of himself, and he thought that his father was imbecile. That his father was very stupid and gave him very lousy advice before the death. So instead of giving any money or any good ideas how to live life, he tells him something that doesn't really work. He does something. So he looks at this and he decides, since going against my father's rules, I became so popular, so wealthy. I have a great family. I really love my adopted son and he loves me, so I should go and create something that will be a secret, and I share it only with my wife. So he decides to go and get one of the favorite falcons of this Marquis, and Marquis really loved to hunt with dogs and falcons. Falcon is a type of bird. So he takes his favorite falcon and gives this falcon for storage to one of his friends. And at the same time, he goes and kills one of his own falcons. And he sits at home and with this killed falcon and starts to prepare it for cooking. The wife comes back and asks what is going on, and he tells that this is a big secret, but he is tired of all of this hunting and going with Marquis almost every day. So he decided to capture his favorite falcon and kill it. And now he wants them to prepare it and to eat it. So he asks his wife to cook it, and she cooks it, and then he eats this falcon, pretending this is a Marquis falcon, and nobody else knows, only his wife, about this. He told nobody else. So immediately Marquis finds out that he is missing his favorite falcon, and the wife tells him what is going on. So Marquis captures this guy and puts him into prison and decides to kill him without a trial through hanging. And he decides that all of the money are going to be split. 1/3 is going to Marquis to pay for the lost falcon. 1/3 is going to the wife, and another third is going to whomever is going to hang the guy. So we started today from Postumius, his adopted son, telling his mom, "Wouldn't it be very wise for me to go and hang my father? Because this way I will get the hangman's part, and almost all of the money are going to stay with us instead of going to the hangman." So Postumius went straight away to the Marquis to ask leave to hang his father, and thus earn the hangman's share, which boon the Marquis graciously allowed. Now Salardo is the name of our guy, had confided the whole of his secret to his faithful friend Francesco, and at the same time had begged him, when the hangman should be ready to do his work, to go to the Marquis and beg him to let Salardo be brought before him, and graciously to listen to what he might have to say in his defense. And Francesco was loyal in carrying out this request. Meantime, the wretched Salardo, loaded with fetters, was awaiting in prison the hour which should see him led to a disgraceful death on the scaffold. "Now I know," he cried, with bitter weeping, "that my good old father, in his wisdom, gave me those precepts for my profit. He gave me sage counsel, and I, senseless rebel as I am, cast it aside. He, mindful of my safety, warned me against my domestic enemies, and I have delivered myself into their hands, and handed over to them my riches to enjoy. He, well skilled in the disposition of despots, who in the space of an hour will love and hate, exalt and abase, counselled me to shun them. But I, as if eager to sacrifice at once my substance, my honor, and my life, thrust my head into the jaws of this Marquis, and put my faithless wife to the proof. Ah, Salarda, better had it been for you to follow in your father's footsteps and let others seek the company of princes. Now I see into what strait my foolish confidence in myself, in my wife, in my wicked son, and above all in this ungrateful marquis, has led me. Now I see the value of the love of this prince for me. How could he deal more cruelly with me than by robbing me of my goods, my life, and my honor in one blow, showing thus how his love has turned it to hate? I recognize now the truth of the proverb, which says that a prince is like wine in a flagon, sweet in the morning and sour at eve. Where is the flow, my nobility and my kinsman? Is this the end of my loyalty, uprightness, and courtesy? O my father, I believe that dead thought you be when you gaze into the mirror of eternal goodness, and see me about to be hanged, because, forsooth, I disbelieved and disregarded your wise and loving counsel. You will pray to God to have compassion on my useful errors. And I, your disobedient and ungrateful son, pray to you also for pardon. While the unhappy Salardo was thus commuting with himself, Pastumius, with the air of a practised hangman, went with a body of police to the prison, and, arrogantly presenting himself to Salardo, spake thus: My father, forsomuch as you are bound to be hanged by the order of the Marquis, and the third part of your goods is to go to him who ties the nose, I am sure, for the love you bear me, you will not be wroth at the part I have chosen to play, seeing that thereby your goods, in lieu of passing to strangers, will remain with your own family. Salarda, after listening attentively to this speech, replied, God bless you, my son. The course you have chosen pleases me much, and if at first the thought of death terrified me, I am now confident to die, after listening to your words. Do your office, therefore, quickly. Pastumius first implored his father's pardon, and then, having kissed him, put the altar about his neck, and exhorted him to meet death with patience. Salardo, when he saw the turn things were taking, stood astonished, and after a little was led out of prison, with his arms bound and a halter round his neck, and accompanied by the hangman and the officers, was hurried towards the place of execution. Arrived there, he turned his back towards the ladder, which stood against the gibbet, and in this attitude he mounted step by step. When he had reached the top, he looked down courageously upon the assembly, and told them at full length the cause which had brought him there, and with gentle words he implored pardon for any effort he might have given, and exhorted all young people to be obedient to their fathers. When the people heard for what cause Salardo was condemned, there was not one who did not lament his unhappy fate and pray he might yet be pardoned. While the events above named were taking place, Francesco betook himself to the palace, and having been introduced thus, addressed the Marquis: Most worshipful sir, if ever you have been prompted to show pity towards anyone, you are now doubly bound to deal mercifully with the case of this friend of yours, who is now, for no fault of his, led out to suffer a shameful death. Consider, my lord, for what reason you condemned Salardo, who loved you so dearly, and never by thought or deed, wrought an offence against you. Most gracious Prince, only suffer your faithful friend to be brought into your presence, and I will clearly demonstrate to you his innocence. The Marquis, with his eyes aflame with rage at Francesco's petition, made an effort to thrust him out of his presence, but the suppliant threw himself down at the feet of the Marquis, and embracing his knees, cried out with tears, "As you are a just prince, have pity, O noble Marquis, and let not the guiltless Salarda die because of your anger. Calm yourself, and I will prove his innocence. Stay your hand but 1 hour, for the sake of the justice which you and your fathers have always reverenced, lest it be said of you that you put your friend to death without cause." The Marquis, violently angered against Francesco, now broke silence. "I see you wish to go the way of Salarda. If you go on enraging me thus, I will assuredly have you set by his side." "My lord," Francesco replied, "I ask for no greater boon than to be hanged alongside Salarda, if, after having made inquiry, you do not find him innocent." This last speech moved the Marquis somewhat, for he reasoned that Francesco would never have spoken thus without being assured of Salardo's innocence, seeing that he thereby ran the risk of the halter himself. Wherefore he accorded the hour's delay, and having warned Francesco that he must look to be hanged if he should fail to prove his friend's innocence, he sent a messenger straight away to the place of justice with an order to delay the execution, and to bring Salardo, bound as he was, and with the rope about his neck, and the hangman and officers as well, into his presence without delay. Salarda, on being brought before the Marquis, noted that his face was still clouded with anger, and outspake at once with clear voice and undaunted courage, "My lord, the service I freely gave you, and the love I bore you, scarcely deserved such a reward as the shame and indignity you have put upon me, in thus condemning me to a disgraceful death. I admit that my folly, so to call it, deserved your anger, but it's very interesting because they translate from from Italian to English, and probably translation is very old. So, for example, right here it says instead of deserved your anger, it's two separate words. It's de, and separately served. So instead of deserved, it's deserved. And I see this very similar things very frequently. It's like older type of English. I don't know what is the reason for this. I admit that my folly, so to call it, deserved your anger, but I was guilty of no crime, heinous enough to warrant you in condemning me thus hastily and unheard. The falcon, on account of which your anger was kindled, lives safe and sound. It was never in my mind to kill it, or to insult you. I wanted to use it as means of trying an experiment, the nature of which I will now disclose to you." Having thus spoken, Salardo bade Francesco go fetch the falcon and return it to its master, and then he told the Marquis the whole story of the precepts he had received from his father, and how he had disregarded everyone. The Marquis, when he listened to this frank and candid speech, and saw his falcon handsome and well nourished as ever, was for the moment struck dumb. But when he had fully realized his error of having condemned a guiltless man to death unheard, he raised his eyes, which were full of tears, and turned them on Salarda, saying, Salarda, if you could clearly realize all I feel at this moment, you would know that the pain you have suffered from the altar round your neck and the bonds about your arms is as naught compared with the anguish which now torments me. I can hardly hope ever to be happy again, after having done so grievous an injury to you, who loved and served me so faithfully. If it were possible that all should be undone, how gladly would I undo it. But since this is out of the question, I will do my utmost to wipe out my offense, and to give you all the reparation I can. Having thus spoken, the Marquis, with his own hands, unfastened the altar from Salardo's neck, and loosened his bonds, embracing him the while with the greatest tenderness, and having taken him by the right hand, and led him to a seat by his own, he ordered the altar to be put round the neck of Postumius, and the youth to be led away to execution, because of his wicked conduct. But this Salarda would not permit. Postumius, he said to the wretched youth, what shall I now do with you, whom, for the love of God, I have nurtured from childhood only to be so cruelly deceived? On one side is my past love for you, on the other, the contempt I feel for the wicked deed you planned to do. One calls upon my fatherly kindness to forgive you, the other bids me harden my heart against you. What then shall I do? If I pardon you, men will jeer at me and my weakness. If I punish you as you deserve, I shall go counter to the divine exoneration to forgiveness. But that men may not tax me either with too great leniency or too great severity, I will neither make you suffer in your person, nor will I myself endure the sight of you any more. And in my place of my wealth, which you so greedily desired, you shall have the altar which you knotted round my neck, and keep it always, as a remembrance of your wicked deed. Now begone, and let me never see you, or hear of you again. With these words he drove out the wicked Postumius, of whom nothing more was ever heard. Theodora, as soon as she was told of Salardo's liberation, fled to a certain convent, where she soon ended her days miserably. And Salardo, when he heard the news of her death, took leave of the Marquis, and returned to Genoa, where, after having given away all the wealth he did not want for his own use, he lived long and happily. During the telling of Laurettius' story, divers of the hearers were moved to tears, but when they heard that Salardo had been delivered from the gibbet, and Postumius ignominiously expelled, and of Theodora's flight and ill-starred end, they were heartily glad. The Signora gave the word to Lauretta to propound her enigma, so that the order of entertainment agreed upon the previous evening might be observed, and the damsel, with a smiling face, gave it in these words: In a prison, penned forlorn, a tiny son to me was born. Oh, cruel fate! The savage elf, scarce bigger than a mite himself, devoured me in his ravenous lust, and changed me into sordid dust. A mother fond I was of late, now worse seen than a slave's my fate. The fair Lauretta, when she saw that no one was likely to solve her riddle, said, "This enigma of mine concerns the dry bean, which is imprisoned between two husks, where later on she engenders a worm no bigger than a mite. This worm feeds upon her and finally consumes her, so that not only is she destroyed as a mother, but not even the condition of a servant is possible for her." All were pleased at Lauretta's explanation, and Alteria, who sat next to her, having been selected as the next speaker, began at once her story, without awaiting the Signora's command. Night was the first. Second fable. Cassandrina the thief.